Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. On February 22nd, 1980, the USA men's hockey team defeated the Soviet Union during the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. Though their roster was solely comprised of college hockey players, and though their opponents had won 4 consecutive gold medals at the event, the underdog Americans somehow pulled off one of the greatest upsets in the history of sports, as they defeated the Red Army team 4-3 in their penultimate game of the tournament. In fact, this legendary showdown was quickly nicknamed the Miracle on Ice, since the outcome was deemed nigh impossible at the time, and the final score seemed to be the result of divine intervention. While the Americans would finish first place at the tournament and clinch the gold medal as Olympic champions, this iconic roster would be disbanded soon after the tournament concluded. Though each player would quickly go their separate ways, nearly every member of the team found great success in the several decades that followed. After all, whether they produced a lengthy career as a pro hockey player, they made their mark in a team's front office, or they found their calling away from the sport, the 1980 roster produced some pretty impressive individuals both on and off the ice. Given that it's been 42 years since this showdown took place, and since a number of its participants are still active within the sport to this very day, I began to ask myself, what happened to all of these players after their historical win? Well, let's take a look at every member of this iconic group and find out, shall we? So in today's video, join me as we explore what happened to the 1980 USA Olympic team after the miracle. Part 1. Now, in order to figure out what happened to the entire roster, let's take a look at each member of the team in order of their jersey numbers and see what all of them got up to in the many years that followed. We'll start with the team's number 1, Steve Janasak. Having served as USA's backup netminder during the 1980 Winter Olympics, and having failed to suit up in a single game at the tournament, the 22-year-old netminder would make the jump to the NHL directly after the competition, as he joined the Minnesota North Stars for the remainder of the 1979-80 season. After playing a single game with Minnesota that year, Janasak would spend the next few seasons in the minor leagues and play a pair of games with the Colorado Rockies during the 81-82 NHL season, before retiring from the sport in 1983 following a 35-game stint with the CHL's Wichita Wild. Not the greatest career, of course, but hey, at least he won a gold medal for his troubles, folks? After hanging up his skates for good, Janasak would leave the hockey world behind and take his talents elsewhere, as it is said that he went on to become an investment banker in New York. However, I couldn't find any recent information regarding what Janasak has been up to over the last few years, so whether he is still an investment banker, he has changed his career path since then, or whether he is now enjoying retirement remains to be seen. Next up, we have the team's number 3, Ken Morrow. After playing every contest during the 1980 Olympics, and after potting 3 points in 7 games with the team, the 23-year-old defenseman would also jump straight to the NHL after winning the gold medal, as he joined the New York Islanders, who drafted him 68th overall in 1976 for the rest of the 79-80 season. From there, Morrow would produce quite the successful tenure in the show, as he spent the next decade playing exclusively with New York, scored 105 points in 550 games, and won several championships too, as he was part of the Islanders dynasty that won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups between 1980 and 1983. Sounds like a pretty good career to me, folks. After playing 34 games with the Islanders during the 88-89 NHL season, and after scoring 4 points during that span, Morrow would retire from the league and immediately take his talents behind the bench, as he spent 3 years as an assistant coach of various different teams, including the Islanders in 91-92, before being promoted to New York's Director of Professional Scouting in 1992. In fact, Morrow continues to work in this capacity nearly 30 years later, and remains with the Islanders organisation to this very day. So not only did Morrow win an Olympic gold medal, he played over 500 games in the NHL, won 4 Stanley Cups for his efforts, and has spent the last 3 decades working in a team's front office. Well, he certainly could have done a lot worse for himself, that's for sure. Wearing number 5, we have Mike Ramsey. Having scored 2 points in 7 games during the Olympics, the 19-year-old defenseman would make the jump to the NHL shortly after the tournament, as he joined the Buffalo Sabres, who drafted him 11th overall earlier that year in 1979 for the rest of the 79-80 season. From there, Ramsey would go on to play parts of 17 seasons in the NHL, where he scored 79 goals and 345 points in 1,070 regular season games. If all of that wasn't impressive enough though, Ramsey would also earn several accolades too, as he was named a 4-time NHL All-Star and lifted the 1997 Stanley Cup as a member of the Detroit Red Wings. It may have taken over a decade and a half, but I'm sure that it was well worth the wait. After retiring from the sport shortly after his cup win, Ramsey would immediately begin a career in coaching, as he returned to Buffalo for the first time since 1992 and joined the team as an assistant coach for the 97-98 NHL season. After 3 years with the Sabres, Ramsey would take a season-long hiatus before joining the Minnesota Wild as an assistant coach for the 01-02 season, a role he would serve for the next 9 years until the conclusion of the 09-10 season. So after winning Olympic gold at just 19 years old, Ramsey would play over a decade and a half in the show, win a Stanley Cup during the final year of his career, and spend 12 seasons as an assistant coach in the league. Sounds like he lived up to his 11th overall selection, right guys? Moving on to the team's number 6, Bill Baker. After scoring a single point in 7 games during the 1980 Olympics, the 22-year-old defenseman and alternate captain of the team would join the Montreal Canadiens organisation, who drafted him 54th overall in 1976, shortly after the tournament, and spent the rest of the year with their AHL affiliate, the Nova Scotia Voyageurs. From there, Baker would play parts of 3 seasons in the NHL and score 32 points in 143 games, before retiring at the conclusion of the 83-84 season after spending the year with the CHL's Tulsa Oilers. Once he had called it a day on his career, Baker left the sport of hockey completely and took his talents to the medical field, as the Hockey News reported back in 2009 that Baker returned to dental school and became an oral surgeon. While his firm has treated a variety of diseases and performed various different surgeries, Baker has expressed interest in breaking into hockey management once his dental career is over, so maybe we'll see him back in the game at some point in the future. That said, a former hockey player becoming a dentist is the most ironic thing I have ever heard. After all, why knock somebody's teeth out when they can pay you to fix them instead? It's not like he had a shortage of clients given his previous career path. Wearing number 8, we have Dave Silk. Having scored 5 points in 7 games during the Olympics, the 21-year-old forward would turn pro shortly after their gold medal win, as he joined the New York Rangers, who drafted him 59th overall in 1978 for the rest of the 79-80 season. From there, Silk would end up playing 249 NHL games over parts of 7 seasons split between 4 different teams, and scored 113 points during that span, before taking his talents to Germany in 1986. In fact, Silk would remain in Germany for the final 5 years of his career and scored 241 points in just 166 games, before retiring from the sport at the conclusion of the 1991 season. After hanging up his skates for good, Silk would return to Boston University, his alma mater, and serve as an assistant coach of the men's hockey team while attending the university's Graduate School of Management, where he earned both an undergraduate degree and a master's in business administration. According to his LinkedIn, Silk last worked as the senior director of Aberdeen Standard Investments, a role he held from June of 2015 to December of 2020. Sure, he may not have had the longest or the most decorated NHL career, but it sounds like Silk has been pretty successful over the last few decades. Wearing number 9, we have Neal Broten. After notching 3 points in 7 games with Team USA, the 20-year-old forward would return to the University of Minnesota shortly after winning Olympic gold. Having spent the following season with the university, and having won the 1981 Hobey Baker Award given to the best player at the collegiate level, Broten would join the Minnesota North Stars, who drafted him 42nd overall in 1979 towards the end of the year. From there, Broten would produce quite the NHL career, as he suited up in 1,099 regular season games, scored 923 points during that span, and earned several accolades too, including 2 All-Star appearances, a Lester Patrick Trophy, and the 1995 Stanley Cup as a member of the New Jersey Devils. Oh, and he also had his jersey number retired by the Dallas Stars in 1998, and he was voted the best Minnesota-born hockey player ever by Minnesota Wild fans in 2009. So yeah, the guy created quite the legacy for himself. After finishing the 96-97 season with Dallas, and having spent 17 years in the show, Broten would hang up his skates and retire from the sport. Though he would briefly come out of retirement and play 3 games for Team USA during the 1999 World Championship qualifying tournament, according to an article by the NHL in 2009, Broten has retired to River Falls, Wisconsin, where he and his wife breed horses on a farm that they run together. So it seems like Broten has traded the bright lights of hockey for a quiet life in the countryside. Given that he played well over a decade and a half in the best league in the world, he's certainly earned a rest, that's for sure. Next up, we have number 10, Mark Johnson. Having led his team in scoring during the Olympics by potting an impressive 11 points in just 7 games, the 22-year-old forward jumped straight to the NHL shortly after their gold medal win, as he joined the Pittsburgh Penguins, who drafted him 66th overall in 1977 for the rest of the 79-80 season. From there, Johnson would suit up in 669 NHL games split between 5 different teams, score 508 points during that span, and spend the final 2 years of his career playing for several different teams in Europe before hanging up his skates at the conclusion of the 91-92 season. After briefly coming out of retirement in 1998 and playing a pair of games for Team USA at the age of 41, Johnson would begin a lengthy career in coaching, as he became an assistant coach for the University of Wisconsin men's team in 1996. After spending 6 years in the role, Johnson became the head coach of the women's program in 2002. In fact, Johnson continues to serve this role to this very day, and has helped the women's team become quite the dominant force over the last 2 decades. During his first 19 seasons at the helm, Wisconsin has posted an astounding 522, 92 and 46 record, while also winning a plethora of awards, including 6 national championships, 8 regular season championships, 8 tournament championships, as well as 4 Coach of the Year awards. Oh, and Johnson also became the first Wisconsin player ever to have his number retired by the university too. If all of that wasn't impressive enough though, Johnson would also coach the USA women's team at the 2010 Winter Olympics, and led them to a silver medal exactly 30 years after he had clinched gold. Now that's how you produce an impressive career both on and off the ice. Wearing the number 11, we have Steve Christoff. After scoring 3 points in 7 games during the Olympics, the 21-year-old forward would jump to the NHL soon after the tournament, as he joined the Minnesota North Stars, who had drafted him 24th overall in 1978 for the rest of the 79-80 season. From there, Christoff would go on to play 248 NHL games, split between the North Stars, the Calgary Flames and the Los Angeles Kings, where he scored 77 goals and 141 points during that span. After spending the 83-84 season with the Kings and having retired from the league at the end of the year, Christoff would leave the sport of hockey behind and begin a career in aviation, as he became a pilot for Minneapolis-based airline Endeavour Air. Given that he has been a pilot for several decades now, and given that Christoff is roughly 64 years old at this point, I imagine that he is either seriously considering or already enjoying retirement, and who could blame him after such a lengthy career in the skies? Moving on to the team's number 15, we have Mark Wells. Having notched 3 points in 7 games at the Olympics, the 21-year-old forward would turn pro shortly after the competition and play the rest of the 79-80 season down in the minors. From there, Wells would spend the next 3 years playing for a variety of teams and a variety of leagues before hanging up his skates in 1982 following a 6-game stint with the IHL's Flint Generals. Once he had retired from the sport, Wells has experienced one of the most difficult journeys of any player on the gold medal team over the last few decades. Though he would begin working as a restaurant manager in Rochester Hills, Michigan, Wells would fracture a vertebrae in his back while unloading crates during one of his shifts. To make matters even worse, doctors informed Wells that he had a rare degenerative spinal disease which forced him to retire from his work and undergo multiple surgeries to improve his condition. Not only would he become bedridden for extended periods of time and become clinically depressed as a result of his condition, Wells would be forced to sell his Olympic gold medal in 2010 in order to pay for his medical bills. Since Wells had supposedly kept the medal on his nightstand for the last 20 years, you can imagine that he was pretty devastated to give it up. To add a final nail into the coffin, Wells would sell the medal to a private collector for $40,000, but the collector would later sell it at an auction for over $310,000. I don't know about you guys, but I really hope that Wells is doing okay and things have improved for him in recent years. Surely he deserves some good news for a change, right? Wearing number 16, we have Mark Pavelich. After potting 7 points in 7 games at the Olympics, the 21-year-old forward would spend the following 80-81 season in Switzerland with HC Lugano before signing a contract with the New York Rangers for the 81-82 NHL season. From there, the undrafted forward would suit up in 355 NHL games over parts of 7 seasons, score 329 points during that span, and spend several years in Europe before retiring from the sport in 1991 after a 2-game stint with the San Jose Sharks. Unfortunately, Pavelich faced his fair share of difficulties during his life after hockey. Though he supposedly became a land developer after retiring from the sport, Pavelich would auction off his Olympic gold medal in April of 2014. Not only that, Pavelich was also arrested for assault in August of 2019, was charged with 4 felony counts as a result of the incident, and was committed to a secure treatment facility after he was ruled incompetent to stand trial. After a court-approved transfer to a lower security facility in August of 2020, Mark's sister Jean revealed that she believed her brother had been suffering from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, better known as CTE, as she had noticed Mark undergo clear behavioural changes in the years leading up to his arrest. Sadly, Mark Pavelich is no longer with us at the time of this recording, as he took his own life on March 3rd, 2021 at the age of 63. Such a tragic end for such a talented hockey player. Next, we have the team's number 17, Jack O'Callaghan. Having scored a single point in 7 games during the tournament, the 22-year-old defenseman would spend the next 2 seasons in the AHL before joining the Chicago Blackhawks, who drafted him 96th overall in 1977 for the 82-83 NHL season. From there, O'Callaghan would play parts of 7 seasons in the show and score 131 points in 389 NHL games, before calling it a day at the conclusion of the 88-89 season, following a 30-game stint with the New Jersey Devils. In the years after his retirement, O'Callaghan would return to Chicago and begin working in the financial services business on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Not only that, the former defenseman would also co-found Beanpot Financial Services with fellow NHL alumni Jack Hughes, no, not this guy, while also working with the Chicago Blackhawks Alumni Association, so his love for the Windy City clearly remains to this very day. And that was part 1 of what happened to the USA Olympic team after the miracle. What do you guys think about this iconic showdown, or each player's journey in the many years that followed? Also, are you excited to find out what happened to the rest of the team in part 2? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Raquel and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.